After Iraq had finished its war with Iran, they invaded the oil-rich country of Kuwait. They hoped that they could seize control of Kuwait and use its oil supply to pay off the debt that they had acquired in the war with Iran. This action worried the U.S. and the UN. They believed that after Iraq conquered Kuwait, that they would turn to other oil-rich Middle Eastern countries such as Saudi Arabia in an effort to control the oil market. They immediately took steps to prevent Iraq from invading Kuwait. They ordered Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait. By January 15, 1991, Iraq's leader Saddam Hussein refused to comply with the UN's demands. Major battles of the Gulf War. The Battle of Khafji was the only organized assault that the Iraqi launched on Allied ground forces for the duration of the war. The American troops were posted at an abandoned Saudi Arabian town known as Al-Khafji. The Iraq's 3rd Armored Division advanced with their cannons pointed in the opposite direction, an international signal of surrender. However, as they drew near to Allied troops, they swung their cannons around and began to fire. The battle lasted for 3 days, during which the Iraqi were subdued by heavy artillery and air attacks from Allied forces. 25 American troops were lost, about 10 Arab Allied died, and 32 were wounded. However, over 2,000 Iraqi troops were killed, and more than 400 were taken prisoner. The Battle of 73 Easting took place on the 26th February 1991. It was named after the UTM line, similar to the latitude and longitude on which it took place. The main U.S. unit that took part in this battle was the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Their primary goal was to scout out the enemy troops and clear any of their scouting parties as the Allies advanced to engage the main body of the Iraq Republican Guard. The battle allowed the Allies to fix the Southern Republican Guard Corps forces and push on further into Iraqi defenses and eventually Kuwait. The Allies destroyed 160 tanks, 180 personal carriers, 12 artillery pieces, and more than 80 wheeled vehicles, along with several anti-aircraft artillery systems during the battle. How long the war lasted. On August 2, 1990, Iraq first invaded Kuwait, and then on August 7th, the first U.S. forces arrived in Saudi Arabia. Later that month, on August 22nd, President Bush authorized first call-up on selective reserves to active duty for 90 days. Operation Desert Storm and the air war phase began at 3 a.m. on January 17th of 1991. President Bush authorized the call-up of 1 million National Guardsmen and reservists for up to 2 years on January 18th of that year. The Department of Defense announced deployment of Europe-based Patriot missiles and crews to Israel on January 19th. The Iraqis attacked Khafji in Saudi Arabia on January 29th. The Allied ground assault began on February 24th, and the cessation of hostiles declared on February 28th. How many casualties? There were 147 battle deaths, 145 non-battle deaths, and 1 soldier was declared missing in action. 467 soldiers were wounded. The outcome of the war. In the end, the U.S. and their allies were able to drive the Iraqi Republican Guard from Kuwait. This effectively secured the Western world's oil supply from falling into Iraqi control. Changes after the war. The Gulf War cost America and its allies over $60 billion and helped set off an economic recession caused in part by a spike in oil prices after the war. America also had to fork out around $10 billion just to replace equipment lost in the war. There were also many changes in the Middle East following the Gulf War. Over half of the Palestinian population left Kuwait due to economic burdens. People in Iraq reported illnesses that were later thought to be caused by depleted uranium used in the tanks of the war. Resolution 661 was adopted by the UN Security Council, which provided a full-track embargo on Iraq. This caused widespread poverty and malnutrition. In retaliation, Iraq dumped 400 million gallons of crude oil into the Persian Gulf. This was deliberate to keep U.S. Marines from coming on shore. This was the largest offshore oil spill in history at the time. All in all, the changes after Operation Desert Storm were predominantly negative.